Have you ever asked, what is heaven? Is it another dimension, a paradise? Does it really even exist? We're all going to pass from this earth, and knowing what comes next can end the fear of death and bring you peace. Our goal here at Hello Heaven is to answer these questions and many more concerning the afterlife. Welcome to our podcast, Hello Heaven.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast, Hello Heaven. I'm Barry Strohm, your host. If you're interested in learning the truth about heaven, you've come to the right place. And Connie and I would like to wish you a happy 4th of July. Tonight, we're going to celebrate the founding of our country by channeling with some of our founding fathers to see what it was really like on that first 4th of July. So while you're here, please subscribe to our channel, give us a like. It does truly help us reach more people, and we certainly need the help.
And I'm Connie Strohm, your co-host. Barry and I have been channeling the spirit world for 15 years and have 847 videos at this point. They're on our YouTube channel. You can download the videos at any of our other shows also at free at podbean.com. On YouTube channel, it's in the name of Barry Strohm, and you can view our past shows as we bring you all the aspects of the paranormal, the supernatural, and especially the dimension called heaven. It's our hope that you will tell others about our shows so that we can reach more people and hopefully help them find happiness as well.
Tonight is going to be a very, very interesting show. We're going to channel with the spirits of 3 of our founding fathers. We're going to have Thomas Jefferson, Ben Franklin, and John Adams. The list of our founding fathers is long and includes such individuals as John Jay, who became our first Chief Justice, Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, Ben Franklin, Senior Development Diplomat, who did much to bring France into the war, James Madison, who would go on and become our 4th president. There were actually 56 patriots that signed the Declaration of Independence. It was an act that was like signing a death warrant if the British had won the war. 12 of the colonies at the time voted to approve the declaration that proclaimed the 13 colonies were now free and independent states. That meant they were no longer colonies of the Kingdom of Great Britain. The declaration was actually not signed by all the delegates until almost a month later. It was signed in what is now called Independence Hall in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 12 colonies voted in favor, and the colony of New York abstained. The declaration was authored by a committee of 5. It consisted of John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Tom Jefferson, Robert Livingston, and Robert Sherman. Jefferson was truly the main drafter. So it's only appropriate that we begin by speaking with the spirit of Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, welcome back, Mr. Jefferson. How was Great Britain treating the American colonies at that time?
It was just steadily getting worse. Great Britain in the beginning gave the colonies quite a bit of freedom. Self-government, they would have their own types of legislatures, they would make their own basic decisions, but the main decisions were always made by Great Britain. As time was going on, King George III decided that the colonies had too much strength. So he started passing rules. He brought many of the members of his military, the soldiers, to the colonies. He would tax. He would do many things. He was lessening the power of the colonies' legislatures. And basically, he was changing the court system. He was doing everything to reassert the power of Great Britain over the colonies. The colonies were used to certain freedoms, and especially those on the frontier were very, very hesitant about listening to what the British colonies were doing. King George didn't like the colonies. He was very headstrong, and he felt that whatever he wanted was going to be what the world would do. Great Britain was incredibly strong. They had probably the strongest navy in the world, and they felt that they simply could assert their dominance over the colonies if that was what he decided to do. So things were truly getting worse. The Boston Tea Party was a rejection to taxation on tea, and things were coming to a head. There had been many acts of violence in the year before the Declaration, so it wasn't like this was just coming out of the blue. It was a situation that had been brewing for years, and finally, the culmination was the colonies got together and declared a proclamation of independence.
So, what, in your opinion, was the action of Great Britain that was the proverbial last straw?
It was a combination, but I think mostly it was the taxation and weakening of the laws of the legislatures of the colonies that really brought things to a head. When they started to make the tax a prohibitive tax on tea, which, being British citizens, we considered ourselves British citizens, tea was very important to us. Some of the patriots obviously got rid of some of the tea at Boston, in the Boston Harbor, and the British were very upset about it, to say the least. Even though the patriots had dressed up as Indians, they didn't fool anybody. The military, members of the British military, were being placed in people's homes. There were people being arrested, and it was a terrible time. Americans at the time were used to freedom. It was not like living in England where everything was very small and very determined. The colonies were very large. They stretched out over great areas. It took rugged individualists to go into the backcountry and to develop it. And the people of the colonies were just simply not going to put up with it.
So, what was it like during the Second Continental Congress where the Declaration was adopted?
There were many differences in the colonies at the time. In many instances, it's almost like your current government. The interests of people in Massachusetts was very different from people in the southern colonies. Slavery was huge. The southern states relied upon slavery, and the northerners were very opposed to slavery. The economics were very different. The northern cities relied upon trade with other countries. In the South, they grew cotton, more agricultural. They had very few industries. So it was very difficult trying to get the individuals of the different colonies together. But what was the most important thing was that all of the individuals wanted to be free. They did not want to be under the control of Great Britain. They did not want to be paying taxes to pay for the European wars. And it was just very, very important that to the individuals living in the colonies at the time that they throw off the governing yoke of Great Britain. The Congress was very, very split. It was, as I say, it was very similar to today. There were there would be fistfights that would break out from the differences of opinion. The cities wanted certain things. The rural areas wanted certain things. It was very, very difficult.
What were you attempting to accomplish in the draft of the Declaration?
I simply wanted the will of the people. I knew that the people wanted to be free. I knew that they wanted to be free of Great Britain. So if you look at the Declaration, you will see that I laid out many of the things that the King and Great Britain were doing to us. I actually itemized many of the things that I thought were even illegal. When you read the Declaration, it is like a declaration of what Great Britain was doing to the colonies. And because of it, in summation, we wanted to be free from them because we felt that we deserved it. So I simply was trying to do the will of the people as I understood it. I came from a rural area. I had a plantation and I had slaves. I tried to do what I thought the average opinion of the people of the colonies at the time was. They were all opposed to being controlled by Great Britain, and that was the key. That was why I laid out all of our objections in the Declaration. Many people don't really realize truly how the Declaration reads or some of the information is in it. But you will see that we simply lay out all the objections to what Great Britain was doing at the time and use that as a foundation for why we deserve to be free from them.
How did each of you believe the British would react to such a declaration?
We hoped that it would force them into communicating with us and to come to an agreement. The last thing that many of the people wanted was to have an open warfare with Great Britain. Their military and navy was incredibly strong. They had many forces in the colonies. For the years previous, they were bringing many, many more soldiers to try to control the colonists. So we really hoped that we would be able to negotiate. But the king reacted very negatively, and that's probably an understatement. He decreed that the colonies would be brought under his British control through the military and through the navy. And he basically took away the rights of the colonists. Well, the colonists were not going to stand for this. They had raised militaries before, and they used what militias they had in order to oppose the British well-organized army. The war went on for so many years. It was a terrible thing. But there was no way that Great Britain was ever going to negotiate after they read the wording of the Declaration.
What was it like in the hall as the documents were being signed?
It was almost like dead silence. All of the legislatures realized that when they signed that piece of paper, if the colonists could not be successful in overcoming British rule, that they would be executed. The British were very cruel. They were not nice people to be around when they were upset. They thought that they were superior, and they were trying to exert that will upon the average person. It was almost like a deathly silence, so to speak. Some of the individuals, when they signed, even commented to the fact that if King George saw his signature and the colonists could not obtain their freedoms, that he would be hung. The legislatures truly knew what they were doing. They were making life and death decisions, but they truly felt that liberty was more important than even their own lives, and they were willing to fight for it and to sacrifice their lives as necessary.
When you signed the document, did you think it was going to result in an all-out war with Great Britain?
I felt that it was a great probability it was going to take place. We had started to organize our militias. George Washington had been basically named as the leader of the army after the First Continental Congress. So we were on the road to war. I truly hoped that we'd be able to negotiate out of it. But once the Declaration was signed, there was no retreat. We had to fight for what we wanted. And if we did not, we were all going to be dead.
Sir, how did you ever think that you could defeat a country with the power of Great Britain?
Many thought that it was naive. But also, keep in mind that the colonists were very, very tough people. They fought on the frontier. They had fought the French and Indian War for many years. We had militias, and I think that we truly overestimated our abilities to fight. What we didn't have was a great navy that could compete. We all had doubts, obviously. I think that is why it was so quiet during the signing of the Declaration, because all of the individuals were looking into their own souls and were thinking about the potential not only for them to be killed, but for their families, their homes to be destroyed. So there was a lot at stake. You had to decide whether you wanted freedom or whether you basically wanted to live under the iron rule of Great Britain. And the great majority well, let's just say the majority, because there were many people that remained true to Great Britain during the Revolutionary War. And there were many people that were opposing what we were doing. But the colonies got together and they voted to be free of the yoke of Great Britain. And that was the start of a great thing.
As one of our founding fathers, what do you think when you see our current government?
Well, first of all, we're truly amazed by what has happened to the United States. We never, ever comprehended anything like this would take place. We knew of lands beyond the Mississippi River, but we had absolutely no idea the great expanse. Keep in mind, when we were doing this, France was a great power on the continent as well. They had been defeated in the French and Indian War, but they still controlled basically everything west of the Mississippi. As I look at this incredible country today, I am truly astonished. And I really even find it hard to believe that we were the ones that built the foundation for this. But I'm very disappointed in our government today. There's almost as much dissension as there was in my time. In my time, there was great dissension. The North and the South, we couldn't even mention slavery in the Declaration, or it would have destroyed everything. Today, you have many problems, but you don't have the overriding problems. You have differences of opinion, but it's not life and death differences of opinion as to the extent that it was when we were alive. Yes, we had great differences, but we came together for the good of the people. And that is the same thing that has to take place today. The modern politicians have got to come together for what is the will and for the good of the people. Your government faces so many complex problems today. You have enemies around the world. You have to stay strong and defend yourself. You're very capable of governing into the future. All your politicians need to do is to get along and make the proper decisions for everyone. So I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come through today. I appreciate the opportunity. I've been with you before on other shows, and I've always given you what I feel was the truth and what was my opinion on things. In my time, it was a battle between the cities and the rural areas, whether you had states' rights or a strong central government. Today, you know that as you look around, that you now have a very, very strong central government. It has grown incredibly. There are many areas of inefficiencies because of the terrible growth, and you're facing great problems in your economy. We faced great problems. We had no way of literally financing the Revolutionary War. Keep in mind that the colonies were just a loose association. Today you are faced with taxation problems, just as we were with Great Britain. Today you're faced with declining personal freedoms, just as we were. So there has to be a point that the people decide, and not the politicians. Supposedly the people can vote the politicians out of power, but the great financial wealth of the politicians today makes it very difficult. The American people have to remain the foundation of the government. As long as that happens and the people exert their desire to remain free, their desire for the personal freedoms that they've learned to love, then everything should be fine for the country. But today your government has many problems, and they certainly need to try to solve it. So thank you so much for allowing me to come through. I always appreciate it, and hopefully we'll be able to speak again in the future. Very good. Thank you, President Jefferson. You played an immense role in the founding of our country. Now, next, we're going to speak with the spirit of Ben Franklin. He also played a huge role in bringing France as an ally in the Revolutionary War. And I don't know how up to date you are on Revolutionary War history, but we would not have won without France stepping in. The British were incredibly strong at the time. So, Mr. Franklin, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, welcome back, Mr. Franklin. The French and Indian War was fought in 1754 to 1763, in which you tried to rally the American colonies to support the British cause. What role did this war play in the American quest for independence?
Yes, I was a British citizen and I was proud of it. I tried to rally the American colonists to fight on the side of the British. The French were very cruel. They had Indian allies that were very brutal at the time. And the French and Indian Wars stretched out for many, many years. Many of our pioneers were killed on the frontier because of it. But what the war did, it forced the colonies to create militias for protection. And these militias fought against the French and the Indians. And these militias remained in existence after the war. So actually, there was a foundation of military that the colonies could draw upon. The French and Indian War was a very difficult time for the colonies, but they learned that if they stood up and if they fought, that they could be successful. And this attitude came forth after the war as well. Many of the people that lived in the colonies, they wanted their freedom. They wanted to live free. The United States at the time didn't exist. It was all the colonies of Great Britain. As time went on, Great Britain was trying to enforce more power because the Americans, after the French and Indian War, understood they had fought for their own freedoms and they wanted to take it from the British as well. The British were clamping down on the colonists, and the colonists were rugged individualists. They weren't members of the European society. They had fought their own way to freedom, and they just simply weren't hearing it. So the French and Indian War plays a huge role because that is where the Americans really learned how to fight and to join together.
Okay, as you said, you were a proud British citizen at the beginning of when the Declaration of Independence was signed. What changed your mind?
Freedom. I realized that the Americans would never be free under the role of Great Britain. The new king was very headstrong. He was doing things that were alienating all of the citizens of the colonies. He wanted to be totally in charge. He wanted it to be that all of the members of the communities of the colonies were treated like the other colonies of Great Britain. Keep in mind, Great Britain was a worldwide empire. They had conquered many countries. It was different in the American colonies. They had never used the militaries to conquer the people here. They had colonized. The people who came over from Europe came from Great Britain, from France, from many of the countries. But more came from Great Britain. So their colonies here were not truly under the military control that the rest of the British Empire was. And they wanted to bring that direct control. So when the new king came in, he decided that he was going to enforce the control over the Americans like the rest of the British Empire. And we just simply weren't going to stand for it. So when they tried to exert more power, we fought it. And we wound up declaring independence as a result of it.
So it was King George that really got us started on declaring our independence, huh?
It wasn't great before, But yes, he played a huge role.
What role did you play in the writing of the Declaration of Independence?
Thomas played the biggest role. He was a very, very literate person. As he was mentioning while he was speaking to you, the Declaration was basically a document that laid out what we objected to in what the British government was doing to us. Thomas was a wonderful, wonderful writer and orator. He put together a very, very good document. I helped in several areas, but he had done a great job. I helped with the punctuations, the wording. The Congress itself made many more changes than I ever thought they were going to make in his document. But basically, I just helped him correct the wordings, correct better ways of phraseology, just certain things. But what Thomas did was the foundation of it.
So then you basically agreed with his wording.
Yes, his wording was very good. I helped him add some things. There were portions that he didn't realize was taking place that I added for him. There were things the British government was doing that he didn't realize were so serious. So we tried to take the major points. We wanted to point these out to the British king, and we hoped that he would take steps in order to alleviate it. Sadly, what he did was only take strengths to reinforce all the problems that he was creating.
What effect did slavery have on the Declaration of Independence?
Slavery was a subject that we were afraid to bring up. I was from Pennsylvania, and I never owned slaves. Thomas was a slave owner. Many of the most important people, George Washington, who we had named to be General of the Armies, was a slave owner. If we had tried to declare independence for the slaves, there would have been absolutely no agreement. The South would have never, ever signed on to that, the Southern colonies. The colonies had to be united. If the 13 colonies were not united to face Great Britain, we had no chance. There was no way that an individual state could have ever defeated them. So it was very, very important that everyone joined together. And slavery was a huge, huge issue. The British were outlawing slavery. So it was just simply something that we could never even speak of in that document if we ever wanted anyone to agree on it.
What role did you play during the Revolutionary War?
I played the role of a diplomat. You see, I was up in age. At the time of the Declaration, I was 70 years old. But I had been over in Europe. I knew some of the players in France. We realized from the beginning that it was going to be very difficult for the colonies as individuals to ever defeat Great Britain. France and Great Britain were always at each other's throats. So we felt from the beginning that we needed to bring France into the war, and that France was going to be the key to us really winning it. They had a great navy in France, and without that navy, we were just simply at the mercy of Great Britain. So I spent most of the war in France. I tried to negotiate, and we were successful in bringing them into the war. Connie, excuse me.
In 1783, the Treaty of Paris ended the Revolutionary War. What role did you play in the Treaty of Paris?
I was one of the key negotiators. Once France entered the war and the Battle of Yorktown took place, Britain was ready to settle. They did not want to have defeats all around the world. So we negotiated, and we made an agreement between Great Britain that was signed in Paris, and that's how it got its name. But I was very instrumental in bringing the players together. I knew I knew what we had to accomplish, and I knew that the war had to end. We were financially in the colonies not able to keep this up. We did not have the right of taxation. So the funds, it was very difficult to raise the funds for a military in those days. But the Treaty of Paris ended the war, and thank God it was over.
Yeah. Mr. Franklin, what do you think when you see our government today?
I'm pretty much in line with what Thomas had to say to you. Your government is very split, but our government was very split as well in those days. Thank God you don't have slavery hanging over your head with all the other problems. Most of the differences that your political parties have are really quite minor in the overall picture. They may argue over tax rates or certain bills that would be passed or interest rates or whatever. But really, they're both united in excessive spending. They're not fighting over how to cut the budget or how to stop deficit spending. It seems like the things that are the worst for the government are the things that they seem to be in agreement with. They have to stand up. The people have to stand up and stop the politicians. The people stood up and we did the Declaration of Independence and we stopped Great Britain. The people can stand up and stop the modern politicians from doing their idiot moves as well. The United States is the most powerful country in the world. It has more economic assets and it has many, many things that it can do. But it's in the hands of your government. They have to get along. God, you hear him say all the time that you must coexist. That also goes for the political parties. Connie?
Thank you so much, Mr. Franklin. Do you have a final message for our listeners?
Yes. As I watch from over here, I do believe that the dissent between the political parties is very dangerous for the country. As I said in my last words, they only seem to agree on what is bad for the country. You have got to get your spending under control. I'm not sure that either party is capable of it. So it's up to the people. It's always the people that provide the strength. It's always the people that will stand up. If the parties continue to take away the freedoms of the people, I'm sure there will be a time that the same drive, the same feelings that existed in my time will come forth and the people will rise up and do something about it. So it's up to the people. It always is. Today you celebrate the day that we declared freedom from Great Britain. Maybe there has to be a day when you stand up and declare freedom from your political parties. That is totally up to you. So thank you for speaking. I really appreciate the opportunity. Don't get much time over here to talk to the people, but thank you so much for allowing me. Okay. Mr. Franklin, thank you so much. You were indeed an amazing person, scientist, name it. But basically, you were a great patriot. Now we're going to speak with John Adams, who became the second president and was the first president to hold the office of vice president for George Washington. President Adams, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, we appreciate you coming. Why were you such an advocate for freedom from Great Britain?
I could see what was taking place. I was an attorney, and I always stood up for individual freedoms. During the Boston Massacre, I stood up for the British soldiers because the mob had antagonized them. I always felt that freedom and justice were most important. Great Britain changed. there was no longer freedom and justice for the people in the United States. They were treating the colonies like they should be subservient to everything that the king wanted. The people of the United States were individualists. They were very strong. They fought on the frontier. They created the states. They drove back the savage Indians that were fighting them. They created this world in North America. In reality, the British had very little to do with it. They would trade with us. They would give us a foundation of legislatures and laws, and they would help enforce them. But they were changing. It was no longer equal justice for the colonies. Great Britain wanted total dominance over them, and they weren't going to stop till they got it. I realized this at an early time. I realized it shortly after the end of the French and Indian War. You could see the change. And I came to the conclusion at an early time that the only answer was freedom from Great Britain. My brother Sam was a great patriot. He fought for freedom from Great Britain. He did it peacefully, and we were punished for it. So the only way was force. And sadly, I knew that when we signed the Declaration of Independence, that it was also going to be a declaration of war against Great Britain.
What did you feel was their most egregious policies from Great Britain?
They were destroying the equality of justice. They were overriding our laws. They were fixing the courts. There was no such thing as a fair trial. As an attorney, that was what I think alienated me the most. I fought for the British when they were right in court. And all of a sudden, there was no such thing as equal justice. I knew that a country could not exist without equal justice. And I knew that the taxation policies were going to seriously hurt the individuals in our country, just the same as some taxation policies hurt the people today. So I became a staunch supporter of freedom, and I'm so happy that I did.
So are a lot of us that are here today. When you signed the Declaration, did you think it would lead to total war?
Yes. There were those that thought it would lead to forcing them to negotiate, but I knew better. I had a great understanding for the new king. I understood that in my mind that there was going to be nothing we could do, really. That the only answer was going to be to break the yoke of control of Great Britain. And I knew we'd have to do it militarily. So yes, when I signed the Declaration, I knew that it was also a declaration of war.
Did you really think that you could defeat Great Britain?
I had great hope. I hoped that we would be able to bring other countries in. I knew that we were short of the tools that we needed, that we did not have enough cannon, enough gunpowder, rifles. We had relied upon the British trade for many of our weapons. And once that dried up, I knew that we would have to make the weapons ourselves. And I also realized that we simply weren't organized to the point that we could do it. So did I think we could? Yes. Could I guarantee that we could? Never. I knew that it was going to be a very difficult time. In my heart, I guess I hoped that they would negotiate and we wouldn't have to fight. But I knew that it was coming. I knew that there was going to be war. And I thought that I knew what we could do to win the war. And as it turned out, we were successful. We brought France in, and that was when the war turned.
Did you agree with the wording that Jefferson proposed for the Declaration of Independence?
Mostly. I actually thought that he could be a little stronger in what he was doing. They wanted to simply lay out what the British were doing wrong. I thought that they had omitted some things. I didn't think they were strong enough about the judicial system, but I guess that's because I was a practicing attorney. I thought that they were destroying our court system that we had set up. They were sending in their own judges, and our courts were becoming a joke. So I thought that maybe he could be stronger in those areas, but obviously I guess he was very successful, because look where you are now.
Yeah. What changes did you have him make to the Declaration?
I did have him strengthen some of the statements about the judiciary and how they were interfering with it, how they were interfering with our legislatures. So I was more in that type of a vein with the wording. I think I made the biggest changes there. I didn't make many changes to it, but I did try to help him. We had long conversations about what he thought we should include, and some I agreed with and some I didn't.
So what was it like trying to get the delegates to agree on the Declaration?
I cannot tell you how difficult it was. There were many that simply refused to give up their British citizenship. There were many that feared for the lives of themselves and their families. There were many that just simply, they wanted change, but they weren't willing to die for it or to do what was needed to get the change. It had to be 100% commitment. I realized that. I knew that you had to be 100% committed to splitting from Great Britain. There were so many that had been citizens of Great Britain for generations. There were many people from the colonies that had just migrated from Great Britain. So many of the people were very split, and there were cases where it put neighbor against neighbor. But I knew what had to take place, and that was what I fought for.
You and Jefferson both died on the 4th of July in 1826. What was it like when you met Jefferson on the other side?
Well, first of all, I had a great faith in God, so I knew I was going to heaven. What I didn't realize was that one of the first people I was going to see was Thomas. He and I had serious disagreements, to say the least, through our lives, but we had become fairly close at the end of our lives. And we knew that we were the last of the fathers and of the 56 people that signed the document. But don't ever say that God doesn't have a great sense of humor. For him to arrange that Thomas and I would die on the same day, within hours of each other, and be the last of the founding fathers, it was unbelievable. I knew that my soul would go to heaven, but I did not feel that the first person I would see was Thomas. I actually thought he was still alive. In those days, news took much time, so I was failing in my health. I knew he wasn't well, but I did not realize that we died on the same day. And only God could arrange it. It was on the 4th of July, probably the greatest day in our lives. We just simply didn't realize it at the time.
God has an amazing sense of humor. You were a great proponent of liberties and freedom. Do you believe our liberties and freedom are being diminished today?
Sadly, I do. Taxation in its present form is certainly taking away the standard of living for many. The creation of the Federal Reserve that controls the economics. There are many, many ways that you're losing your freedoms. The mere act of taxation is a diminishment of freedom, because you do not have that money to pursue your personal goals or ambitions. Today, a person who's in the legislature counts their success by how many laws they're able to pass. Every law that is passed has an effect on people. There are more laws than you could ever read in a lifetime that exist in your country. each law basically is going to diminish the rights of an individual. The people have got to control their legislators. That is not taking place. When the people decide that they are giving up their freedoms, I truly believe that they will rise up. Americans are still great individualists. Yes, there are many social problems in the country. The big cities are becoming great social problems. Immigration is a problem. But the people are capable of handling all of these problems, given politicians that will try to solve those problems for them. So, yes, I feel very strongly that Americans have far less freedoms than they had in my day, but we fought for it. Many, many people died for it in my day. And today you simply go to the election booth and you pull a handle and you don't have to die. You vote for your politicians. But if you vote for the bad ones, bad things are going to happen to you.
Yeah, that's basically what God has said on occasion. So would you have a message for our current people in the government?
Yes, I do. I would tell them that they have to listen to the will of the people. And above all, they must preserve freedom and liberties. If you take away the freedom of the people, then the government will cease to exist. You've heard many times that every great civilization has failed, and it is because of the governments, not because of the people. If the governments fail the people, the governments will cease to exist.
Very much true. Do you have a final message for us, President?
Yes, I do. First of all, I want to thank all of you, and I want you to have a wonderful 4th of July. We never realized the importance of what we were doing at the moment it was taking place. When we announced it, there may have been a couple hundred people that heard us. We stood on the steps in Philadelphia and proclaimed our freedom from the most powerful country in the world. So from few have come this incredible institution that you refer to as the United States. Today, the countries of Europe have, in many ways, followed the ideas of the democracies that have come to us through the years in the United States. There have been times of great misunderstandings. The Civil War was a terrible time, but slavery was a terrible thing. Today, the United States is standing at a precipice. There are many, many powerful countries that hate the United States. But keep in mind, there were powerful countries that hated us. Great Britain was the most powerful country in the world. They wanted to basically destroy the government that was trying to be established in the colonies. Today, the weaponry is incredible. The abilities to kill millions at a time. One cannot even consider that. In our time, there were cannons and many people died, and there was much brutality. Great Britain was a very, very brutal country at the time. They tortured our people, they killed the families, burned the homes. So it was very difficult. Today, the same thing is happening in other countries. So not much has changed since the Declaration of Independence. But what is most important is that you fight to maintain your independence and your freedoms. Every time you lose a freedom, you in all probability are not going to ever regain it. So when you give up a freedom, just say goodbye to it and it is gone. When all of the freedoms are gone, then the people may understand what they've done. But I would tell you ahead of time, preserve your freedoms, because once you lose them, you will never regain them. So thank you so much for allowing me to speak on this 4th of July. I enjoy watching the fireworks from this side, and we can see them. They are incredible. Celebrate the freedom that we fought for and maintain it, and all will be well. So thank you so much. Goodbye, and have a blessed 4th of July.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all three of you for giving us a wonderful show.
Okay. As we look back on the events that led to our freedoms and the leadership of the United States, the leadership in the world today, and compare them, it's very difficult to understand what our founding fathers sacrificed and endured. When they signed that document, they knew that was a death warrant if they didn't follow through. So I hope our show tonight's giving you a little insight into the greatness of our founding fathers. They were truly incredible. Now, all of our shows are streamed on our YouTube channel, as well as my personal Facebook pages. Our Facebook group that's the largest is Words of God Then and Now. All our live videos are broadcast there. If you want just the audios, you can download them on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Alexa, many of the other platforms. We use Podbean, BEAN.com, and you can go there and download any of our shows, the audios. It's a little hard to download off of YouTube, so Podbean is a lot easier. If you'd like to participate on the show, send an email to onestrom@gmail.com. Describe your story of the supernatural, maybe a near-death experience. Everybody loves near-death experiences. I would love to put some more on the show as well. So I'll get back to you, set up a time to record. I hope that some of you would take the time to do this. We're always looking for a new show, what we should do. And sometimes it's a challenge for me to make up these shows. I'm getting old. So I'd love to do some more recordings of you guys and hear what you have to say. My 11th book, Jesus' Missing Years of Modern Gospel, is available in paperback, hardcover, ebook, and audiobook on Amazon. If you want a signed copy of any of my books, the only place you're going to get them is on my website, barrystrom.com and spiritspredict.com. Missing Years tells the story of the 32 years in the life of Jesus that are not covered in the Gospels. If you read the book, you're going to understand why they're not there. Nobody really understood while Jesus was growing up how special he was. So nobody took notes. Connie and I channeled 24 different spirits close to Jesus during his lifetime, and we bring you their words, and they speak of what it was truly like to know Jesus.
It was an amazing time. Thank you for listening to our podcast, Hello Heaven. Please join us on YouTube Live as well as Facebook Live on Barry's personal page and our Facebook groups on Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time for our videos of the live feed. The audio of our shows can be heard on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, Alexa, Spotify, iHeart, and all the major platforms. So please tell your friends about our shows. They're all meant to prove the existence of an afterlife and to bring you peace.
So thank you for listening to Hello Heaven. Our goal is to bring you the true information about the afterlife. You can't hide from it. Everyone's going to pass from this earth. And the more you know about the journey of the soul, the less you have to fear. When you listen to us, you hear the truth. We aren't making this stuff up. And when I sit down, I never know what the words are going to be. So tell your friends about our shows. You'll be doing them a favor. So goodbye. And thank you so much for listening to our show. Thank you for listening to Hello Heaven. Please join us Fridays at 6 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Facebook. You can hear us on multiple audio platforms such as Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, Alexa, and other media platforms as well. If you'd like to appear on the show, send an email to onestrom@gmail.com and tell us your story. Have a great week. Tell your friends about our show. They'll thank you for it. Music is by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.